Dying Light 2 is the sequel to Dying Light, the original. That's a fun fact for you if you didn't know that. But in all seriousness, Dying Light 2 was the game that re-energized the zombie genre, I would say. I mean, just look at these scores. It's rare for a game to do this well, and let alone a zombie game. Zombie games saturate the market, so it's hard for developers to create a good, unique experience in this genre. So it's really rare for when this actually happens. So instead of breaking down a game that stands out for the wrong reasons, I decided that I would go into a zombie game that is memorable for all the right reasons. It is also a good time to do a breakdown of Dying Light 2, as with the third game coming out soon, I thought it'd be a good time to just kind of jump in, break down the characters, the story, and what worked for it and what could have been improved upon. Also, if you want to skip the story recap and want to go straight to the analysis part, I'll put up a timestamp now. Got that? Great. If you enjoyed, subscribe, you know, all that other basic YouTuber stuff. Anyways, let's get into it. We start Dying Light 2 running from a horde of undead, escaping the horde just in the nick of time. The game instantly shows us that who we're playing as is kind of a badass and also quite competent. Then we meet up with a familiar face, Spike, and the 15 years have been rough to him, but he's still kicking. We get some exposition of him telling us why we are there, so here's a quick rundown. Our name is Aiden, we are looking for our sister. We are faster and more durable than a normal person. We are a pilgrim, and pilgrims are not particularly liked. We are also looking for a man named Walt, who is revealed to be the one who experimented on Aiden and his sister as a child. Spike gives Aiden some good news that someone can help him, and he just needs to contact them via the radio tower, so Aiden heads there to contact that mystery person. Once at the tower, Aiden contacts the mystery man, who seems to know a lot about Walt and why Aiden was experimented on. The guy says he needs Aiden's help to get him out of the city and to make it to New Paris. In return, he would tell Aiden everything. So we head off to make our way into the city of Old Villador. Once there, we make a friend. We then make another friend, the one from the radio. However, we have to separate, as a group known as the Renegades are after a key that this man has stolen. After a little conflict, we end up with the key and have to hide as Waltz basically executes our new friend. So much for New Paris. And instead of running away like a smart person, Aiden waits around to get found out. After a quick chase, we escape that death trap, and finally, we make it to safety.
He's fucking turning!
Kill him! Quick! No! Hang him! Let's watch the fucker die! Damn it! Fuck, what did I do? Fucker! Fucking stray whore! Wouldn't it be faster to dash him over on the show? Leave him the fuck alone! Here comes! He's about to turn!
What's his problem? Thought it was a sleazy
He's an outsider! He must be killed!
He's with me. You got that?
Didn't I tell you not to go anywhere without me, eh? Didn't I fucking tell you?
Fucker, you. They'll tell you about. Shh, shh, not now.
Okay, maybe we weren't safe. After this new mystery man saves us and gives us a mystery substance, we survive. He introduces himself as Hakon, and he takes us throughout the city, giving us a bunch of exposition about the world we are in. To cut a long story short, he gets us a biomarker, as if you don't have one, there's a good chance you'll have the door shut in your face or be hanged. He also informs us that everyone in the city is infected. However, they are able to stop themselves from turning as they use sunlight, as it stops the infection from progressing, and UV lights have the same effect, so they don't turn in the middle of the night. We also learn that Hakon wants to leave the city and wants to go with Aiden. Aiden agrees, but only after he finds his sister. They must make it to the Fisheye, which is the central loop, which is completely separate from the part of Old Villador that Aiden is currently in. They come up with a plan to sneak past the Peacekeepers, as they are currently guarding the only way in and out of the central loop. The reason they're doing this is because one of their commanders got taken out. The plan doesn't go well, and Aiden gets captured and interrogated. Ultimately, he makes a deal with the Peacekeepers to find out what happened to their commander. After this, Aiden has to earn the trust of the civilians within the church, where he will make some friends. After befriending the members of the civilians, he ultimately decides to help them take over a renegade outpost, as they kind of abducted their leader or something. Aiden is very efficient at it. After this, a little bit of chaos occurs as the civilians learn that Aiden was helping the Peacekeepers. After a quick fight with a giant, Aiden confronts them and ultimately they come to a compromise. Aiden will keep helping the civilians and they will help him find a way into the central loop. Aiden helps them by saving a water tower and giving it to the civilians. After this, he heads back to the civilians' hideout, and this is where he finds a piece of skin. Specifically, a piece of skin with a tattoo from the commander that was taken off his body. And it looks like Sophia's brother, Barney, is the one responsible. Barney doesn't particularly like that we're snooping and that we found it, so then we fight. But ultimately, we come to an agreement that it could have been planted. They meet up at the church where Aiden had his first introduction to the city, and they talk about attacking the Peacekeepers and taking away their power. Carl, the leader, disagrees, but he ultimately gets overthrown. After this, they come up with a plan to destroy the Peacekeepers' main power source, a windmill. Aiden then talks to the blacksmith, Alberto, to go blow it up. A little while later, Aiden would climb the windmill and set explosives, however, they weren't enough to destroy it entirely. So he would then have to climb all the way back up with an active bomb with a timer on it, and then ultimately escape. He would make it back to Alberto, but he would die due to some Peacekeepers who found him before Aiden could get back. Aiden would then return back to their home base as the Peacekeepers weren't happy with what the civilians did, and were seeking revenge. After Aiden helps free them, he meets up with Hakon. As they go to leave, Hakon gets a free acupuncture session. While Aiden goes to help him, he discovers that he is the guy who killed the Peacekeepers commander and is kind of responsible for this whole entire thing. Aiden, begrudgingly, ultimately decides to help save his life, so he goes after the sniper. The sniper is a bit of a hassle to reach, but ultimately we stop them and she is a bit aggressive, but spares Aiden. She makes it clear that Aiden should be careful with who he befriends, referring to Hakon. Hakon mentions to look out for her as she is extremely dangerous. Aiden says he doesn't want to see Hakon again, and after his betrayal, he leaves. He then heads to the tunnels by himself to get to the central loop. While there, he runs into a few problems with the power, but he gets it open in the end. Then we have a moment with Aether, with basically the leaders of the Peacekeepers in this section, who is a bit mad that we didn't side with the Peacekeepers. However, we must work together to get out after the door is shut behind them. After Aiden helps them turn on the power, it's revealed that Waltz is with them.
You're gonna pay for Lucas.
Still on Jack Matt's leash?
Save it for your trial, just before they cut your head off.
Do you really think that's how this is going to play out, Lieutenant? Lucas's death was just the beginning.
You admit you had him killed. Take him.
Why does his death bother you? You're not enjoying your new role? New status, new challenges, new possibilities. Don't I deserve a thank you for making this possible?
Nicely put. Now enough of your crap. Cuff him, Pepper.
I'm glad you finally joined us.
Shut up,
now,
Walt.
give back what you stole from me. Give back the key boy, or you will all die.
Fuck! Pepper! What are you waiting for? Kill him!
Pay for what you've done.
The little boy wants to pretend he's a grown-up, but he's no grown-up, just a precious little boy.
After Aiden wakes up, he fights the remaining renegades, and then his infection flares up, and he rips them apart with his bare hands. After this, he heads to catch Waltz and get his key back, which he kind of succeeds at, sort of.
Where is she?
You? I already killed you once. This time, I'll do it right. You're one of my curious.
Good.
Before I kill you, you'll get a chance to witness something spectacular. Everything comes full circle. We return to the beginning. And now, you will witness history in the making.
History? 5 years old? You torture kids? We were kids.
You were part of something greater. You owe it to me that you are still alive. That you are stronger than others, special. That you are stronger than I could have imagined. Yet not as strong as me. Any last words?
What have you done to my sister?
Sister,
What have you done to Mia?
Aiden, you're alive.
Run!
Wait, I gotta take it. What the fuck?
Run! He's transforming!
After being saved, we run for our lives through the tunnels until Luan saves us again. She informs Aiden she's just like him, one of Waltz's experiments. They work their way to the central loop, and it's revealed that Waltz had restored power to the city. It doesn't last long, so Aiden and Luan go turn on the power in substations to reactivate the power in certain sections of the city. She also gives him a parachute to use to get around. After meeting some local peacekeepers, Aiden activates the substation and gives it to the civilians, and to save me some time, I give all of the zones to the civilians. To save even more time, I'm going to quickly skim over these next sections till the VNC Tower. Aiden will meet up with the local peacekeepers through the city who don't know about what happened to the other section of Old Villador. He meets the leader, Jack Matt, a very ambitious man who wants Aiden's help to capture a radio tower. The peacekeepers are also based on an old ship, which is actually kinda smart. We also meet the local civilian population and their sort of leader, Frank, who is in rough shape after he lost a lot of his members of his Night Runners group. A group he led back in the day of people who travel the city at night and day to help those in need. They tried to take the VNC Tower, but a member back in the day ditched on the mission, which was a contributing factor that led to all of their deaths. Or most of their deaths, at the very least. There's also some side characters who help out, but they aren't too massively important. Anyways, with that context, Aiden decides to help the peacekeepers get the tower back, even though they want to use it for mostly propaganda. The first step is to get the elevator working, which of course they kind of failed at, so Aiden has to go and help turn on the power for them. After this, they make a safe zone on one of the levels. The next day, Aiden will go up with the peacekeepers, where we get one of my favorite scenes.
Hey, you guys want to hear a joke?
No, where's Bowski? Fuck, please.
I'm begging you, I'll give you my last clean pair of undies if you spare us another one of your jokes.
Keep calm, gentlemen. Where's Bowski? Fuck.
Sorry, boss. Won't say it, Pete.
You're off key, dumbass. And one like this. Whoa. Commander, sir, what's going on? Elevator stopped.
The power's unstable again. It's a huge building. We're on it. Alright, boys. The repairs will take some time. We can't wait. It's footwork from here. What floor are you on?
30.
So you got another 50 to the roof.
Right, boys. You heard the commander. Open her up. Let's get hiking. Where's Bowski? Recon. careful, Wisbowski.
Looks clear.
Of course, things don't go well. Nearly all the peacekeepers get wiped out immediately, and Aiden survives barely. When he regains consciousness, he finds that he is stuck and he can't get out. However, luckily, Luan and Frank come to the rescue. Frank tells him where to find the grappling hook, and Aiden uses that to get a move on. Frank helps guide him through the building. Frank leads him to safety, however, he tells Aiden that he should just use his paraglider to get him back to the fisheye. However, Aiden disagrees and believes that he can make it to the top, so he continues. He succeeds and makes the decision to give the radio tower to Frank, as he believes Frank supports the people way more than the peacekeepers do. This obviously upsets Jack Matt, but there's nothing he can do about it. Then Luan shows up and is upset with Aiden as he put himself at risk. I also like the fact that she says that she took a more dangerous route to kind of dismiss the fact that she got there when she did, which is honestly very impressive, if not a little unbelievable. Anyways, after this, we follow her to her place as she needs new shoes as she destroyed hers. Here, Aiden goes in and retrieves the shoes and finds out that she was once with Hakon. We meet up with her and find out that, yep, he kind of ditched her, and that's why she gave him a new piercing a little bit ago. Aiden then gets woken up the next day listening to some decent music and gets to speak to Frank. Aiden's a little annoyed at Frank because he gave up his only chance to find his sister, but Frank tells him to calm down and to meet up. Frank mentions that with the power of sobriety, he has a contact who can help them. So after a tension-filled chat with Luan, we head off to rescue the contact known as Veronica. She used to work in a GRE facility and knows her way in. For context, a GRE facility is the facility where Aiden got experimented on and where all the scientists did all their sciencey stuff. Aiden and her will work their way through, not without some problems though. Aiden would actually find out that she isn't just some lowly doctor, she was the head of her department. Also, she's quite claustrophobic. Aiden has some issues with the head of department thing, but ultimately decides to work with her. They make it to the computer to find their medical information. They find out that Mia doesn't have a record on file, but they also find out that Aiden's last name is Caldwell. While there, they also learn about a substance that was used on Aiden and the other kids. They also learn about a missile attack that's going to occur on the city since Walt's turned the power back on. After there, there's some shenanigans and they get split up. Aiden finds her again, just in time to find Walt's choking her out. Aiden helps her get free and then they run for their lives. They make it out, Waltz and Aiden fight, but his infection flares up before he could win the fight. This causes him to attack Veronica, and she doesn't survive. When Aiden comes to, he realizes what he has done and that he is slowly losing control. He also witnesses the city get bombed, and he gets bombed himself, but luckily, Luan comes in clutch. Aiden tells her that he's losing control and that he killed the doctor. Luan tells him not to tell anyone and that they will end Waltz together if it's the last thing they do, as the city is in serious danger, as the missile attack that happened just before wasn't the first, as there's many to come. Aiden meets up with Frank and Jack Matt, and they make a game plan to team up with the renegades to stop Waltz. I also just realized while reading the script that I kind of forgot to add a little bit of detail. See, before the whole doctor thing happens, Hakon actually helps Aiden and Frank by letting them know that their side objective of hunting down Waltz was kind of compromised and that they were leading Aiden into a trap. Aiden then agrees to go meet Hakon and talk to him about why he helped. This is when it's revealed that Hakon is actually helping the renegades and is trying to kill Aiden. They talk, and ultimately Hakon mentions that he only left Luan because he was trying to save her life, and that he initially joined them to get information on Waltz. Aiden and him fight, and eventually Aiden spares his life. Then Luan shows up, and Luan really wants to shoot him. However, Aiden can convince her not to, and he does. This is also a sign to Frank that she's grown enough that she can officially become a Night Runner, and she joins. Frank also forgives Hakon, as Hakon was the guy who originally ditched on the VNC Tower mission, and was the reason for a lot of people dying. So, yeah, kind of forgot that bit. Put it in there, just some more context so you're not confused a little bit later on why Hakon is helping these people. The meeting doesn't go too well as Frank gets the Hakon treatment, and while dying because the arrow was poison, Aiden has to make a choice. He has to either choose between saving Frank and chasing after the truck, and ultimately, he decides to save Frank, which Jack Matt isn't too happy about as he wants you to chase the truck. Aiden would then go to the witch doctor, the local medical person basically, get the stuff that's needed and gives it to Frank to save his life. Then Jack Matt reveals that there's a tracker on the truck and that he should be able to find it. So Aiden then follows the truck and then he hunts down the driver of the van and uses him to get into the Renegade's hideout. Aiden finds their boss and has a little chat with him. And in this conversation, he finds out that Jack Matt hasn't been all that honest with him, and he was responsible for Frank getting shot. Aiden agrees to leave the Renegades alone and accepts their help to find Waltz. I just noticed I've said Jack Matt every time, so I'm just going to call him Jack from now on. Jack threatens Aiden and he keeps it, as on the way to stop Waltz, Jack ambushes Aiden. However, the night runners come by to show their support for Aiden, and the peacekeepers just decide to turn against Jack. However, they get interrupted with the building falling. Aiden would then follow Waltz into the bunker where we see him carrying his sister. Aiden then works his way through the facility where he finds Waltz and he confronts him. It is then revealed that Aiden didn't promise his sister to stay with her forever and to help her. He actually promised Waltz. And it is also revealed that Waltz is his daughter and Aiden is kind of his adoptive son. Aiden, although understanding that he is trying to help his sister, decides that she wouldn't want all these people to die for her to survive. So they fight. Their infections flare up, and they take blow after blow until they're interrupted by Mia, Aiden's sister. They talk, and Aiden mentions that the people will die, and she agrees that Aiden should save those people. But Waltz kind of stops that.
Mia, the key. Without it, the city will be destroyed.
Mia, you need your ventilator. I beg you.
It's come too far.
Mia, hurry.
You need oxygen now. Understand? Without it, I can't cure you.
You've been trying to cure me for years. I don't want it anymore. Save those people, Aiden.
No, no, no.
Oh my God. No.
Mia, please, breathe. Honey, please, breathe. Help me.
Waltz then takes Mia back to her bed after she collapses, and luckily, Mia is just alive. Then Aiden is given the choice, as it's revealed that Juan had found the missiles and had planted explosives. But she has to set them off herself, leading to her sacrificing herself, basically. Aiden debates going after her, but ultimately, she convinces him to save Mia. Luckily, Hakon is there and goes to help Luan. Aiden makes a run for it, and they just make it out before the facility blows up. Aiden buried her and then left the city because he was turning from the drugs. We then get a time jump 2 weeks into the future, and it's revealed that Spike is back and he's out and about asking about Aiden. It is revealed that he did find his sister, but she ultimately died a couple of hours later after they met. It is then revealed that Aiden isn't going to be alone, however.
But they said she was so weak. She lived only for a couple more hours. He stayed with her, buried her under an old oak tree. Then he turned toward the horizon and kept on walking. Poor guy. If it wasn't for him, there wouldn't be a single brick still standing in this city.
So why didn't he stay?
They said he was starting to change, taking a drug that was destroying him. People like him are better off on the road.
Think we'll be able to find work along the way?
Luan, you were supposed to stay in the city.
Says who? I decided I wanted to stay with you. And not with Williams. That's for damn sure. Well, let's go already.
Okay, well that took a bit, but now we're on to the breakdown and review section. Let's talk about the endings. There's a few that you can get in Dying Light 2, all with a varying amount of positives and negatives. So in my playthrough, we got the good ending with the civilians who take over, and you know it's the good ending because they've had no deaths the night before. Then we have the Peacekeepers ending, where they basically become a dictatorship sort of and hold on to the water supply, and they're very strict about following who gets water. The Peacekeepers ending is definitely a little bit worse, as they've had a few deaths due to the protests and people wanting the water. Then we have the ending where the Renegades basically take over, and it's just a worse version of the Peacekeepers. And finally, we have the ending where the entire city gets demolished, but some people survive, somehow. You can also end up with some slight variations of these endings, normally on whether Aiden leaves the city by himself or goes with Lawan, and if you're selfish and destroy the city, you can leave with Hakon. These endings add a little bit of variety to the game, and it's interesting to see how the different factions turn out if you give them power. However, sadly, it's pretty clear that the guys you want to side with is the civilians. I kind of wish it wasn't so clear who the good guys are, you know? Like, it's pretty clear that the Peacekeepers aren't great. However, I wish they had some redeeming features, or at the very least, they gave the civilians some negative traits as well. However, when it comes to the civilians, they are basically next to perfect. I mean, they are super selfless. I mean, the only real negatives I could find was Luan's revenge fantasy and Frank's alcoholism, which he kind of does a complete 180 on. Which I guess kind of makes sense story-wise, just a little unbelievable. For most people anyways, especially if you've been an alcoholic for a very long time. I kind of wish that there was a good positive ending for the Peacekeepers. Like maybe one where Jack Mack gets overthrown and someone who's more honorable takes his place who actually wants to help the people in return. Or that they work together with the civilians. However, I understand that you kind of need a good guy, bad guy situation in a lot of these games. I just kind of wish it was a little bit harder to, you know, decide who you want to go with. Overall, for a story, Dying Light 2 has an interesting and an attention-gripping story. However, there are some noticeable flaws. For instance, Luan showing up in the top of the VNC tower even though it was said to be nearly impossible, but she managed to get up there faster than Aiden. They kind of dismissed this, saying that she took a more dangerous route, but that's still a little unbelievable, especially for how much they hyped it up. However, overall story-wise, it isn't too bad. It's got three main highs. You've got in the beginning where you escape that one section of Old Villador to get to the central loop. You then have the VNC tower, which honestly is probably the most exciting part, well, was for me anyways. And then you have the ending where you confront Waltz. They're all three very good highs, and in a lot of ways, they're kind of like miniature stories that like build up, have a peak, build up, have a peak, and it kind of flows, which is a plus.
Where's Bowski? Fuck.
Sorry, boss. Won't say a peep.
Let's do a quick breakdown of the characters we meet throughout our story. First, let's start with Aiden. When we first meet Aiden, he has spent his time as a pilgrim, kind of like a nomad, traveling from place to place throughout the apocalypse. We don't know much about his past, except for his time in the lab, and he also doesn't really remember his past, except for the fact that he was experimented on and his sister is missing. He doesn't particularly like getting close to people, and it's also hinted at that all pilgrims kind of have this mindset. Pilgrims are also kind of feared, as civilians kind of find them insane to be walking across the country in this sort of world that they live in. Which kind of makes sense when you think about the scene in the intro. Aiden being a playable character really comes down to how you play him. However, a few things are clear. Aiden is sympathetic and an opportunist. He is ultimately in Villador for one goal: find his sister, which he spends a lot of time doing. He helps people along his journey, but ultimately he is using them to find his sister. The real moment where he decides to choose the people of Villador over his sister is with the radio tower. The player definitely has more incentive to give it to Frank than to Jack. However, Jack says he knows a way to get into the base to find information on his sister. But if he chooses to give it to Frank, he understands that Jack will not give him this information, and ultimately he is choosing the people over himself. Aiden, although a pilgrim, a person who spends a lot of time by himself, is actually very empathetic. He cares for others and does feel bad for people in need, but he normally gets involved if it affects him or his goals. As a character as well, he spends a lot of time reflecting on the people he interacts with, which actually makes him pretty good at looking at the bigger picture. However, his own emotions can get in the way of that at times. Overall, Aiden has a good sense of humor and is likable and enjoyable as a character. Oh, Hakon, the man of many mistakes. Hakon, like a lot of people in Dying Light, has a lot of issues. He's quite likable off the bat, as he is a guy who saves Aiden from being turned into a piñata, basically. However, it eventually gets revealed that he was manipulating Aiden and trying to use him to get his way out of the city. Hakon initially is looking out for his own interest, and he also has a big problem with making horrendous mistakes, as he got himself in such a rough spot with his own decisions. For instance, his breakup with Luan was him trying to protect her. However, he could have easily avoided that by telling the truth. He's also extremely cunning. This can be seen with the fact that he plants the commander's skin into Barney's place to make him look like the culprit. Hakon is also very smart despite his stupidity at times, as he's extremely resourceful and good at setting situations up. He just isn't great at finishing what he starts. Despite this though, after his whole emo phase, if you're able to spare his life, he has a proper redemption arc. Hakon goes from a man who is willing to betray his friends to a man who's willing to put his life on the line to help his friends. This can be seen with the final mission where he will save whoever Aiden doesn't go after. He'll either take Mia to safety or save Luan's life, even if it puts him in danger. He'll also leave with Aiden in one of the endings, even if Aiden is a threat to him, in his own words. Hakon represents that no matter how big of a mistake there is, there's always a possibility of coming back. You just have to try. Luan has one hell of an intro by shooting Hakon in the shoulder. Luan probably has the most issues right next to Frank. She was also experimented on as a child, which gave her a reason to hate Waltz. When we meet Luan, she is full of anger and hate, which I don't blame her. I'd be mad too if I was traumatized as a child and then my only father figure became a drunk and the only other person I trusted broke my heart. Not a great run. Anyways, Luan is very vengeful, as throughout most of the game, her goal is revenge. Luan does have a softer side, however she puts all of her pain into anger so she doesn't have to feel it as much. However, once she starts to heal after forgiving Hakon, she starts to actually grow and become happier in her life. She also gets to be a night runner now. And although she gets to be that, she can ultimately decide to leave with Aiden, as she realizes that just because she wanted it isn't what she truly needs in her life, and she's willing to give that up for someone else. Frank has one of the biggest turnarounds throughout this game. When we meet him, he has nearly killed himself with alcohol poisoning. He is severely traumatized about losing a lot of his friends when he tried to take the tower. However, he starts to have a bit of a turnaround once he receives access to said tower, so he can start helping and lifting people's hopes throughout the city. Frank is fairly stubborn at times, and he starts off pretty pessimistic. Especially when Aiden goes up the tower, he's constantly telling him to come down and leave it, and that he'll never make it. However, once proven wrong and given hope, he starts to inspire the ones around him, which starts with him getting the Night Runners together again, and starting all of that up, it gives him an extra lease on life. Frank becomes a beacon of hope for the people of Old Villador, especially in the civilian ending when he's still alive. He's the one who gives them information on how to help one another and so on. He goes from a grumpy old pessimistic drunk to a man full of hope and wonder and realizing that the world still has good in it. Jack Matt's character arc in Dying Light 2 is one of ambition, pride, and a hunger for power. His military background sets the stage for his later role as the leader of the Peacekeepers. Matt's story starts with his strong belief that he alone can bring order to the chaos of Old Villador, which leads to him challenging the authority of Colonel Williams and ultimately forming a rebellion against the military. Jack has a strong obsession with power and the belief that he can bring peace to the city and will do so at any cost, making him a complex and dangerous leader. His interactions with characters like Manfred and Aiden highlight his strategic approach to utilizing those around him with special skills, often seeing them as a tool for his goals and not as actual people. Jack's narrative represents how power and control can be distorted by a personal grudge and ambition. He tries to kill Frank and sets people up and tries to kill Aiden after Aiden decides not to help him. Jack's pettiness and grudge is ultimately what distorts the Peacekeepers, all due to his own beliefs. However, there is still hope for the Peacekeepers, as they realize ultimately at the end, he is unfit to lead anymore. Walt is a character who hasn't got much screen time, however his presence can be felt throughout the game, as characters will periodically mention him, and he is kind of viewed as this boogeyman of Old Villador. When we first meet him, we are hiding from him, in the vent. His intimidation factor can be felt massively with the way he talks. We get a hint of his messed up past when he talks about being forced to kill his pet horse. And then when we next see him, we really get to see why he's so feared, as he takes down the Peacekeepers with ease and gets to show off his great durability. Waltz has no empathy for what he is doing and just views it as a means to an end. The only glimpse we get of him being hesitant is in his actions when he realizes that his adoptive son Aiden is still alive. Ultimately, Waltz is very manipulative and very good at getting people to do the things he needs. He also has a very strong one-track mind with what he is searching for, and he's willing to do whatever it takes. Which makes sense when you take into consideration he's doing all of this for his daughter. However, by the end of the story, Waltz loses a lot of his fear factor after you beat him. You see him as a mentally ill and broken man. I mean, his mind is so gone probably from his obsession, but also the infection. I mean, he destroys the GRE key without really thinking about it or meaning to. He just ends up doing it because he's so paranoid and so desperate. He ultimately is the reason his daughter wasn't going to live. He also doesn't listen to her wishes. She makes it clear that she doesn't really want to live anymore, but he won't let her go. I think one of the more physically horrific things when it comes to him is that when he's injured after the battle, you can see the muscles under his flesh, and you can see the volatile look showing how far infected and gone he truly is. Okay, so now that we've done a little bit of a character breakdown, let's talk about some of the small things I noticed that makes the game just a little bit more special than other games. The first thing I noticed was the fact that every time you die, you get the basic "you shouldn't have done that." But instead of just saying that falling from a roof hurts, they actually show you the perks that you could unlock in the future so you can have a better chance of survival, just giving you a slight nudge into the right direction. Speaking of perks, your stamina and health are given a base number that goes up every time you use the inhibitors. This number will let you know if you are capable of achieving something. For instance, some areas involve a lot of stamina, and if you hover over the location in the map, it'll tell you the amount of stamina you should have before approaching that challenge. Another thing I really liked as well is that the fact that I was playing on a PS5, and when the infection flares up for Aiden, your controller will start to flash the different colors. Notably, a light blue and pink, the same colors around the screen. It's a little detail, but it's a nice touch. One big pro for me is the characters, as in my opinion, they're a lot more enjoyable than the ones in the original Dying Light. Don't get me wrong, Crane is a rememberable character, and the people around him aren't forgettable either. However, to me, the cast of Dying Light 2 felt more fleshed out. For instance, one of my favorite characters, even if he goes through an emo phase, is Hakon, the first real friend you make, and he has some of the best lines and jokes throughout the game. Then we have characters like Luan, who, at first, I wasn't her biggest fan, but she does grow on you. After these two, we have the supporting characters like Frank, who also does a great job, and honestly, has one of the best redemption arcs in the game, in my opinion. Well, depending if you help him. The villain Waltz is an intimidating dude who is actually kind of sympathetic when you know he's doing all of this to save his daughter. It's just a shame that he's doing it at the expense of others. They are all interesting, and even the background characters are great. Even the return of some characters from the original Dying Light make an appearance, which is always nice. Now, since launch, there has been a few things that have been added that I have never seen before. However, there is one notable thing that I noticed when I came back, and that was the inclusion of guns. See, in the base game, you had to rely on bows or your hands, or if you went the Peacekeeper route, you can unlock the next best thing to a gun. However, with the inclusion of guns, you don't have too much of a reason to go the route of the Peacekeepers, as although their stuff is useful, their only real appeal is the weaponry. Getting the guns are pretty easy and include simple missions, except for when you take part in the co-op mission to find medication, as it's meant to be done as a group, and I did it alone, so it took a little bit of effort on my part. However, once you get your first gun, you start to unlock more by earning tokens by completing specific missions around the city. I decided I wasn't going to finish the game with getting more guns, as I felt it would make it too easy, and I will say, even with the pistol that you get from just completing the base mission, did take away some of the difficulty in certain sections. Notably boss fights, as I could just pull out the Glock and unload. Now, I think the introduction of guns are definitely enjoyable, but I feel like they should have been left for after you complete the main story, or for a new game plus, as it really does take away some of the intenseness of your first playthrough. This was my second playthrough, however, but I did forget most of the story. The guns are definitely fun, but they can definitely feel a little bit janky at times. The biggest issue I had was you couldn't use your survival sense with it equipped, as the button is the same to look down sight. All in all, not a bad inclusion, definitely adds more variety to it. It's just hard to make guns a little bit believable in this world, especially as when you shoot someone, or you get them in the head, they don't really go down, they just kind of walk it off, so there's that sort of problem as well. Co-op is actually done really well in Dying Light 2, and is enjoyable. I mean, it would be if I had friends. That would be funny if it wasn't so true. However, I did get to play with some randoms, and the experience wasn't too bad at all. I mean, the movement does look a little funny at times, but it's never bad. You can basically play co-op throughout the story entirely, nearly anyways. However, the story only progresses on the host server, so if you join a friend's game, yours won't necessarily progress. Also, the host gets the final say in the decisions, but that makes sense. The game works well with co-op. The massive open world and the movement system definitely gives players a chance to mess around and explore around with their friends. Another really nice touch that was added is New Game Plus. This was added in later updates, but I'm glad that they added it. It lets you replay the game and you get to kind of start off as a beast. I mean, that would be the case, however, they did introduce power scaling for this. Many people mention though how tough the New Game Plus is, even with good gear. Many people just end up using max boosters to get through. New Game Plus is good if you want to experience new endings though. And it is also kind of important if you want to max out your stats, as New Game Plus adds new immunity boosters for the player to receive. Another little side note that I really liked is the cover for Dying Light 2. See, the first Dying Light is about the infection spreading throughout a secluded city, where the rest of the world was okay. So the undead is the main attraction of the game, and thus on the cover. However, in Dying Light 2, the virus has spread throughout the world, which means there's a very limited amount of survivors remaining in the world. Thus, in Dying Light 2, we focus a lot on the remaining humans, as the zombies are now the majority. Which makes Dying Light 2's cover art so appealing, as it focuses on the human aspect now. It's just something I noticed. Although, in my opinion, Dying Light 2 is the best modern zombies game in recent years, it isn't perfect. The first big thing for me was the regular audio glitches the game had at times. Occasionally after 2 hours of game time, there would be an audio issue where the intense music would just stay on, and that's all you could hear. Then the subtitles would show up telling me that I was talking to someone over the radio or something like that, but you couldn't hear them, so you would have to read, which is fine, but I'm not that great when it comes to reading. Another thing I found a little annoying is with the locations that you can get loot from. I found it very weird that these locations would resupply after you had already looted them. I also disliked how these spots would stay on your map once you had completed them. This made it a little bit tricky to find certain locations as I was trying to platinum the game and trying to find the things I missed throughout. However, once you complete the game, you can toggle on and off certain icons to make finding things you missed a little easier, so I am kind of glad about that. Now personally, I like the movement system in Dying Light 2, but I know a lot of people had complaints about the changes that were made. Dying Light 2 had more of a floaty style to its parkour and movement, unlike Dying Light, which was much more fast-paced and a harsher sort of movement set. Although Dying Light 2's movement can be floaty, it does a great job of giving you that extra second to make up your mind on where you are going to go. Another con is definitely collecting the inhibitors and military tech that are all throughout the city. Although enjoyable at the start, it does get repetitive. I didn't mind too much as I was just listening to a podcast while I played. However, without that playing in the background, I'd probably get bored pretty quickly, just going from place to place on the map just to unlock more abilities. However, the movement system does make this a little bit more enjoyable, getting to, parkour your way throughout the city. Speaking about repetitiveness, side missions kind of fall in this category as well. All the time, side missions can be boiled down to destroy this thing, collect this thing, go to this place, and etc. They're very simple. However, one thing can be said is that the side characters are actually pretty entertaining at times, and they can reveal quite a bit about the world you're in. However, this only applies to side missions you can get from other characters. The task/help board doesn't have this benefit. Dying Light 2 also had some issues with the menu screen while I played. What I mean by this is that the screen would occasionally go black for a second or two. This happened only really in the menu, so it wasn't too bad, but was still annoying at times. There was also some glitches with characters walking through each other, but at the end of the day, it wasn't too bad. Another con in my opinion is how obvious it kind of is that the Peacekeepers aren't the good guys. Don't get me wrong, there are good Peacekeepers throughout the game, but it's made pretty clear that they're kind of oppressive and not made out to be the good guys. Also doesn't help that their leader is kind of a power-hungry ass, but I guess you don't find out about that until the end. However, I would have liked more of an incentive to like the Peacekeepers, like I mentioned earlier, just so there was more of a reason to side with them. Maybe if you go their route, you get a guarantee of saving Aiden's sister's life or something at the expense of a better life of the survivors of Old Villador. Just to give you some more incentive to go with them. That was another thing I wasn't the biggest fan of. You aren't able to save Mia. Yes, I understand the story is about Aiden growing as a character and learning to care for the people that he meets along the way. But I would have liked an ending where you can actually save Mia and she gets a better life, But to do this, you would have to basically sacrifice Old Villador and all the people you cared about, kind of making Aiden the villain of Old Villador because of his decision to save his sister, There could also be a little bit of a side arc saying like he's just like Waltz, doing what he wants to do to, you know, save his sister. But I understand that they probably ran out of time and that they've already got enough endings, I suppose. There was also a lack of horror elements that the original was known for. I definitely felt fear at times, but this was mostly during the chase with Waltz when he enters his volatile state. Besides this though, I didn't really feel unease or fear as much as the original. However, there was definitely times when I was going through a GRE facility and an infected would just appear around the corner that I would be lying if I didn't say my heart skipped a beat. There's also a lot of button combinations that players can use while playing, and this can become a little overwhelming. It can make it hard to remember all of the moves you have learned throughout your time in Old Villador. For instance, one of the first moves you learn is a basic kick. However, after I unlocked the drop kick, I started to only use that instead of the normal kick. This can also be seen with parrying and redirecting. There is such a wide range of things you can do, it can be a challenge to remember the right combination to do said move. So a lot of the time I didn't parry and just dodged and kept moving. That method also helped as different enemies have different attacks, some that can not be blocked. However, you just keep dodging, you won't have to worry about that. There's just a lot of controls and abilities that all intertwine, which can just make it hard to remember, so you'll find yourself normally just sticking to a certain skill set. I'm glad that there is variety for different players. However, it was just something I noticed that most of the time, once you find what you like, you'll just stick to that and you won't worry about doing all the other moves. Unless you're someone like that who wants to learn every single move and can remember it off the top of their head, you'll probably just end up using the same like 5 basic attacks every time. Okay, conclusion time, let's do this. Dying Light 2 is not a perfect game. There's glitches and plenty of valid complaints that can be made about it compared to the original. However, as a standalone zombie game, it has everything you need. Enjoyable movement mechanics, a massive open world, a great story with great choices, a satisfying ending depending on what you choose, humor, and alcoholism. That last one is a joke. Sort of. The game does a great job of showing you the negative side of certain vices, whether that be alcohol or revenge. So in short, Dying Light 2 is good. We just needed a cameo from Kyle Crane. But we have the next game coming out this year, so we'll see him soon. Hey, it's Cameron. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, it took a lot of effort, so any support you can show me means the universe to me. That's right, not the world, the universe. Anyways, until next time, if I don't see you again, remember to stay safe, live life to the fullest, and peace.